We often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
That was President Ronald Reagan in 1987. One of the greatest presidents in this entire world, on this entire planet. I met President Reagan once, before that was filmed, when I was just a small boy. President Reagan looked at me and said, "Son, you're going to do great things." Little did I know that he was right. And little did I know that I was not from this planet. So before I get into anything else, if you are watching this, please share this video with everyone that you know, because there is a lot of importance in this video. First off, here's a history of who and what I am.
For your records, but it says here, therefore hear Abraham and see, behold, your seventh generation. So we know that this is a precept to Brasha through Genesis chapter 15, to the word, to the Thurah, shall go with you, and they shall go out into an alien land, meaning it is a strange land. It is a land that our ancestors did not know. Well, our ancestors, they knew the first Egypt. They knew that one because they went there and they traded with the people there. We know that because the story and accounts of Yahusab, Joseph going there too, so they all knew where that was. An alien land means it's a what? Land that they do not know. And then it says, and they will enslave and oppress them as for 1 hour of the impious age, but of the nation, once again singular, whom they shall serve, I am the judge. And Yahuwah said this too. Have you heard, Abraham, what I tell you, what your tribe will encounter when? In the last days. So does it say here that they will encounter it during that time, during the time of Abraham, Yitzchak, or Isaac, and Jacob, Jacob? Does it talk about that with the first Egypt? Does it say during the time of Musha, Moses? No, it says in the last days. Where are we to door names? So it's Salam Yaqub, and the word Salam in the ancient Yahudi, it simply means ladder. Yaqub means Jacob, chapter 5. And it says here, and your descendants, Yaqub, will be strangers in a foreign land, and they will be ill-treated and made slaves of and flogged daily. Doesn't this sound very similar to a specific nation that has been going on since its descendants arrived here in 1619, about 400 years ago? But let's keep going. But the heathen to whom they will be subject, Allah will judge, when a king shall rise up and execute judgment. Then will there be a place for him. Then will your descendants, Yasharal, be saved from the oppression of the heathen who have held them by force, and they will be free from every reproach of their enemies. So what? Free from reproach, free from the inward, free from being called African American, free from being called colored, free from being called all of these heinous things. For the king will be the source of all vengeance and retribution upon those who have afflicted you, O Yasharal. Shama'uth, or Exodus chapter 12 verse 40, where it says, now in certain versions it says, now the sojourning of the children of Yasharal who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years, because some people like to try to use this verse and say, oh, well actually it's 430 years because this verse says that they dwelt in Egypt for 430 years, so that has to be the truth, right? Well, when you look at the actual Septuagint, you'll see that they added and took out, adding and taking away. And because you're wicked translators in the Zionists, because they did all this adding and taking away, well, guess what? They're soon are going to receive all the plagues and punishments that's written in the book. Because in the sojourning of the children of Yasharal, while they sojourned in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan or Canaan, was 430 years. So why is that so important? Because this is letting you know that from the time of Abraham all the way up until the time of the Exodus was 430 years, because they sojourned where? In Egypt and the land of Canaan. Once again, letting you know that the first Egypt could not be and cannot pertain to the 400-year prophecy, because they sojourned there. It was not a strange land to them. This is a strange land, America, because guess what? The language that they speak is English. Well, if you started speaking English to Abraham, Yitzhak, Isaac, or Yaqub, they would not understand what you're saying because it would be foreign. Then we went over the actual letter right here, the Thu or the Tav, which of course is the numerical value of 400. So there are 22 letters in the Ya'udiyah, or the ancient Hebrew language. And so when you take a look at them, you'll see right here, this is the language right here. This is the Shan, which is actually in Yahusha. Here is the Yod right here, which is the first letter in the name of our Father. But then what you'll see is that Tav or Thu is 400. Now in the ancient, it is it makes an X, or it makes a X, cross, and it means mark, sign, covenant. It's the final letter of the alphabet, letting you also know that America is the final captivity of the children of Yasharal, before the cup of wrath is passed on to our enemies, and now our enemies will soon drink from that cup of wrath and will soon receive all of the plagues and punishments. It also represents the beginning and the end. But now what we're going to be talking about soon enough is the importance of the word covenant, or barayath, or baryatha in the ancient Ya'udiyah language, because covenants are so important. What you also have to understand is that the 400 years was part of the covenant. Let me repeat that. The 400 years of captivity was part of the covenant. Why? Because Yahuwah already knew that our ancestors would transgress. He already knew that during the time of the Kings and Chronicles that they would rebel and be a backsliding people, rebellious and stiff-necked, and that they would rebel and that they would have to be punished. So Yahuwah had already told Abraham that declaring the end from the beginning. So you have to understand that 400, when the 400th year begins in the spring, as of the evening of March 19th, you have to understand that that will be the beginning of the 400th year, or mark, sign, and covenant. And we're going to be talking more about that and using precepts as well. Now there are a few other things that I wanted to add that I did not add before, but right here also with the X-Files, as we've gone over before with the season 10 premiere, with the X, you see right there, X marks sign covenant, and how it talks about a so-called alien invasion, and also when it comes to the FEMA camps and everything, and the bank shutdowns as well. But then this right here, you see the X right there, mark sign covenant, 400 years, 2019, when it comes to X-Men, and it just so happens to be a sequel to X-Men Apocalypse. Oh, and let's not forget this Dark Phoenix. Oh, dark like a blackout, because your elite Illuminati have already been telling you that. And Phoenix rising out of the ashes, the 12th 112, just like the 12 tribes. And again, I shared this picture on one of my Living Righteously videos, but I'll share it again on this video here, where I was in a park. Ironically enough, it was a park called Phoenix Park in Ireland during my time there in October of 2017. And I was just walking, and I just so happened to spot a tree there, and on the tree this was written 2019. It could have been any other number, it could have been anything else, but this was written. Now, I actually attended this park last week, and when I was here, well, guess what? I saw this, an X right there. X marks the spot. Mark, sign, covenant. And then a subscriber sent this picture to me as well in Kentucky, where this sign was shown, which shows what? Locust 400? Locust like the plague of locusts? 400 like the 400 years soon to be complete? Again, do you see how important and prophetic?
Now that you know who I am, what I am, and where I come from, I want you all to take a look at this, and then I will be right back to explain it all.
Breaking right now, our top story, a massive power outage plunging into Venezuela into darkness. Blackouts all over the country. They become completely routine, I should say, in this country, but this one is different. This one is different because it is a complete breakdown of the electrical grid power system, and it's impacting nearly all of the country's 23 states. The consequences, more than 24 hours into this, are already severe. We have learned tonight that the country's main morgue in Caracas is totally full and can no longer take bodies. The regime of socialist dictator Nicolas Maduro is trying to pin the blame for the, quote, electricity war, that's what he calls it, on the United States, and specifically Senator Marco Rubio. But the real reason some 30 million Venezuelans are in the dark tonight, corruption.
The lights were out in Caracas and much of Venezuela Thursday night. It was pitch black, no street lights or traffic signals as evening commuters made their way home. The electricity minister called the blackout an act of sabotage at Venezuela's main hydro power station in the state of Bolivar.
We have reports that after they brought the nation back up to about 70% of restoration in terms of power, apparently these cyber attacks have been launched and have set them offline again. They say that they had everything up to about midday and that it was disturbed once again in this reconnection process because of a cyber attack. They're saying that it is cybernetic in nature and that one of the facilities was targeted physically from the inside. That's the one that went up in smoke yesterday. Now, of course, Maduro and his regime are trying to blame the United States and their allies, and the United States is trying to say that it's their own mismanagement and it's their fault for the blackout.
We're talking North Korea. It's now showing the world how easy it is to ramp up its nukes again. New satellite images show that North Korea now has a missile launch site that's ready to go, back to normal operating status. And just yesterday, President Trump said he would be very disappointed if those reports on this were true. Joining us now, we welcome to the show Olivia Enos, a specialist in national security and foreign policy at the Heritage Foundation. Olivia, great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what exactly do these images show? How big is the threat?
Well, the speed with which North Korea has gotten the Sohae missile facility or rocket launch facility back up and running demonstrates that any steps that North Korea took in between the Singapore summit and the Hanoi summit just last week were clearly reversible and confirming the suspicions of many in Washington, purely cosmetic steps. This is extremely concerning because it went from a facility that was largely unusable to now very easily reusable. And this facility is able to test, in particular, North Korea's space capabilities. But this type of testing can also be used for North Korea to refine its missile testing in the future, which is highly concerning.
U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton has revealed that President Trump would be, quote, pretty disappointed if North Korea decides to launch a new rocket or carries out a missile test. The remarks come as satellite images suggest Pyongyang is continuing work on its missile testing sites. Our Easton J starts us off.
I mentioned the culture that we all know is Chinese, and that is the IP theft. I mean, I've got a list of companies here who've sued Huawei and ZTE for stealing trade secrets and then settled lawsuits with them, including Cisco and Motorola and T-Mobile, Microsoft, etc. How do you move the needle on that?
Well, you know, if I were back at the American Enterprise Institute and a Fox News contributor, I could discuss that at length. I'll just say this. I think President Trump has identified exactly the structural issues that you referred to, the enormous damage that's been done to the United States over a period of decades by Chinese stealing intellectual property and forced technology transfers. This is critical to reversing the pattern to get this right in the negotiations. So I don't think it should be surprising that it's complex and that China's faced with some very difficult choices here. That's what our negotiators have been pursuing, and that's really much of the work that remains to be done.
Занятиями они находят время и для улыбок, но настрой боевой. Курсанты второго курса готовятся к прыжкам с парашютом. Считаю все вслух. 121, 122, 123. 124, 125. Нет кубов. Пока идет теоретическая подготовка, первый прыжок намечен на июнь.
Волнения перед прыжками нет, но раньше не приходилось прыгать до училища.
Это тренажерный комплекс самолета Л-410. Таких в России единиц. Сюда его привезли прямиком с Пензенского завода, специально для подготовки будущих летчиков.
Cutting off Russia from the global internet. New laws are going through parliament to control and even stop information online. Opponents say it's even more censorship. So is Vladimir Putin building his own version of China's Great Firewall? But the internet is fast eroding state television's influence. And Russia's main opposition figure, Alexei Navalny, is among those running YouTube channels to provide an alternative voice. The Kremlin's not happy. And through a combination of legislation and surveillance infrastructure, it wants to ensure it has control of all media. New bills going through Parliament are aimed at creating a single command post from which the government can decide what information is allowed online. Putin says it's a defensive response to Trump administration's new cyber strategy, but critics say it's meant to stave off any domestic political unrest.
The guided missile destroyers USS Prudence and USS Preble sailed within 12 nautical miles of the Spratly Islands as part of what the U.S. Navy calls a freedom of navigation operation. The operation was carried out to challenge excessive maritime claims and preserve access to the waterways as governed by international law. Commander Clay Doss, a spokesman for the U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet, told CNN. All operations are designed in accordance with international law and demonstrate that the United States will fly, sail and operate wherever international law allows, Doss said, adding that is true in the South China Sea as in other places around the globe.
I am finding it hilarious. I really am. I am finding it hilarious that you, Venezuela, are still blaming the U.S. for your blackouts. For the EMP burst, as you are calling them. And let me just come right out here and say this right now. This is what this is, an EMP burst. You see this little deal here? This right here. This is a drone. Okay? One of many drones that I have. Okay? One of many. And one of many drones that I have had. Past tense. Have had. As I have already used these. And these are very special drones as they have implanted inside of them an EMP. Electromagnetic pulse. But they don't take out everything. They just take out a power grid. They're flown over a power grid, and everything within 100 yards of this little bad boy here is fried. This is how Venezuela can continue to have like vehicles and stuff like that going. If you have a generator, then yes, you can still have power. But the power plants have been taken out due to these little bad boys here. Drones. We have plain ones too, but that's a chopper. So what I am saying to you, Venezuela, is stop blaming the U.S. for something they had no control over. It was all King X and the X Revolution. But it doesn't stop there. It does not stop there. Russia, U.S., China, and let me see, a little country that I have a history with, or my people, you know, from the planet where I'm from, has a little history with, that all of a sudden now wants to stick their nose where it does not belong like the rest of these countries. I'm talking about Germany. This is none of your concern. Therefore, you need to take it and just mind your own business, and you will be left alone. If not, well, then I can't say that, well, I will say that, you know, I'll have something to do with it. Because I will. You do not understand, people. This is candy. This is all candy. But the Exodus here is not. The Megalodon is not King X. Is not. So whether you world leaders want to step down on your own or get knocked down by I, the new world king, X, is all your choice. Your 400 years are coming to an end. These were signed, dated before the year 1619. And the 400 years are coming soon. On the day that you call, March 19th, 2019. If you have not stepped down by then, well, King X is going to knock you down, along with everyone in the X Revolution. But I don't need them. I will do this on my own. All the X Revolution is people who want to follow the new world leader that is going to give them back their lands, give them back control over their planet. You step down, I'm going to knock your ass down. And this is not a threat. This is a promise. So remember, you bow to King X.